Okay, hello everybody. So I'm Stefan Romero. I'm the country manager for Ecocert Mexico. And today I'm going to present you this session with my colleague Leopoldo about selling organic products in Mexico, especially on the cases of importation and exportation of these organic products in Mexico. You will see that we will try to be as concrete as possible with this regulation, which is kind of worrying for many of you. So we will try to be concrete with examples, not entering into details of articles, article number, etc. If you need this, we can also provide this to you after the meeting, and we will let you our contacts at the end of the presentation. But the objective is really being as concrete as possible on what is the impact for you of this regulation and what you can do to comply. So yeah, I already present ourselves. So I'm Stefan Romero, and we have with us Leopoldo Cerda as a customer relationship officer, specialist on all the technical aspects that you may have in mind and you may want to ask at the end. Please let your questions in the chat. We will answer them at the end, and if you need to ask something, well, we will let you the opportunity to open your microphone at the end of the webinar as well. So the material we will go through is what is Ecocert Group. Then we will explain you some trends of the Mexican market and what says the Organic Products Law of Mexico, which is called LPO for Ley de Productos Orgánicos. So when we talk about LPO, we talk about the national regulation, if at some point I say that. And then we will give you some concrete examples of recertification process to explain you how you can deal with this law. We will explain you as well what are the main differences between LPO and the most common regulations like NOP or European standard. And then we will explain you how is the certification process, or in this case, recertification process with us. Okay, what is Ecocert? So as Ecocert, we were created more than 30 years ago in the southwest of France through little producers that wanted to change the world and that were dreamers, I would say, and who created the first criteria of what were going to be the organic products. They put them in the first organic standard, which first was Ecocert standard and then became the French standard, and then the European standard being public as we know it currently. So basically they participated in all these standards, and at the same time they created the company Ecocert Group to be able to attend any request from any client to certify as organic all over the world. We have diversified all over the years, being also experts on cosmetics, textiles, on organic products, but as well on fair trade, on inequity, on sustainable forests. So many standards that all go through to our goal, which is acting for change. This is really what we want to be as a company, and acting for sustainable change in particular. And at the same time, we have developed internationally, globally, to be able to attend any request from any of our clients all over the world. That's why we have, in particular, the subsidiary of Mexico, but also subsidiaries in any main market of production of or marketing of organic products. So basically, this is what enables us to have the accreditation to audit and certify almost any organic standard, and in particular for what is at stake today, the Mexican organic standard. So we are a multi-sector company. We have solutions for you in certification of many fields. Also, the main one is organic farming and agri-food industry. This is really our expertise and even on global level. So basically, this is what we are known as experts from the authorities and from all the consumers, but we also have experience in sustainable agriculture, regenerative agriculture, quality and food safety, forestry and climate, natural and organic cosmetics, which is an important thing in Mexico. We also have experience in textiles, being organic or recycled, and in CSR and fair trade. So as our original expertise is from organic products, main of our activities are on food products, but we also have a lot of eco products and environment and consulting and training activities, which is trying to address any of your needs, maybe on food products, but maybe on other segments. And we have many clients all over the world from different size of company, being the very small companies sometimes, because we begin with very small producers, so we want to be able to audit any crop or anything being a very small project, as well as being able to certify big companies like Costco, for example, on organic products, and offer them the same service quality, the same quality of service to any kind and any size of company. Okay, so now I'm going to explain you a little bit more about the Mexican market of organic products, and then the impact of the organic products law. First of all, what we can say about the Mexican market is that it's a very growing market with more than 25,000 certified producers. These are public figures from Senacica, which is the authority we have in Mexico. And this is data from last year, well, 2022, which is not so far away. And there are more than 177,000 hectares planted in Mexico. So this represents more or less 2 to 3% of the total of cultivated areas in Mexico. So it's not a lot, but it's not anymore something below 1%, which is already a quite good news. And the production that we are used to certify in Mexico is mainly avocado, aloe vera, coffee, agave, and corn. These are the main products we certify. And the states where we have most of these organic operators are related to these crops. So I won't tell you the whole list. What I can tell you is that we also see a very big growth in demand of organic products consumed in Mexico that are not necessarily produced in Mexico, or not in the same quantities or quality that are required by some importers. So cold weather fruits, like apples, pears, peaches, for example, grains from other countries, or superfoods like quinoa, for example, or maca. Then wine and olive oil that are not very produced in Mexico and are certified a lot on our organic standard abroad, and dried fruits like walnuts, hazelnuts, almonds are imported to Mexico. So basically what we can see here is that it's not only a producing market, it's also a consuming market on organic products. And basically this is shown by the figures we have on sales and average price on organic products, which are increasing a lot on the sales. And this is due to consumer trends that are changing in Mexico. Through the pandemic, especially, some Mexican people preferred to buy less but better, except because most of the consuming of products have decreased in pandemics, but premium categories like organic products. And that's because Mexican people were aware that taking care of their health was important in a moment that health was the first criteria, the first preoccupation of people. So basically, as organic products are a way of improving their health, well, they tended to buy less but better. Basically, that's the explanation of these figures in a moment of economical crisis. And we are beginning to see shelves that are dedicated to organic products. For example, in the photo, you can see Alimentos Orgánicos, which means organic food. And basically, this is kind of new in Mexico. We have seen these shelves for 3-4 years maybe in Mexico, and especially in big cities like Mexico City and the rest of the country, but it's now coming to cities that are not so big as Mexico City. So that's really interesting. And we still see that there is some need of consumer education that are not always very clear about what is an organic product, what is not an organic product. And I think this is the reason why the authorities insisted a lot in implementing an organic standard in Mexico, being LPO in this case. Basically, in the world, we have more than 100 countries that have local regulations that are more or less implemented. In Mexico, it's fully implemented. It has been implemented in 2018 with the full implementation, and it has gradually imposed to importers and local producers to certify under the local organic standard. And basically, the last update we had on this LPO agreement was about importations that now need to comply with the local regulations. Before, it was accepted, tolerated, I would say, to have organically certified products under other regulations like NOP or like your European regulations to enter Mexican market and still use the organic denominations. I would say that this was because LPO was still under implementation and it was not enforced in at 100%. And it was possible yet to do what was called recertification through documentary check, which basically consisted in having some documents of the original certification and issue kind of an equivalence. It was not an equivalence, but it had a very similar way of working as equivalence. Now we have the organic product importation, which is subject to regulation. and which is controlled, because for organic products that are sold, it is mandatory to have a LPO certification or getting an equivalent organic certification. There is no organic equivalent yet. So basically, you need to have LPO certification to be able to import to Mexico. And this can be granted through a whole chain certification as any certification. But the law gives us the possibility to have what is still called recertification, but which can only be granted through an on-site audit now on the last processing plant. So this LPO recertification is kind of a facility that is offering the law to us to be able to have LPO compliance without having to perform a whole chain audit and without having to audit from the seeds to the final product in the packaging. Basically, that's the idea. And we will give you some examples of how concretely it's applied and how we have applied it all over the world. So basically, if you want to sell organic products in Mexico, that's the main message of this slide, is you need to get this seal of Organico Mexico to be able to sell in Mexico. Otherwise, you can't sell in Mexico, you can't import to Mexico, and you can't use an ingredient or a raw material that doesn't have this certification to process the products. Of course, the product can enter the country with other certifications as well at the same time. And if you would go to supermarkets in Mexico, you would see that many products have at the same time Mexican organic certification and other certifications and show the logos of all the certifications. This is accepted, but they must have the local certification. And we have some recent news from customs that are confirming us that this is really controlled at customs. Basically, we received a message from the Accredited Certifiers Association, which EcoCert is member of, because we also, through our subsidiaries in the USA that are EcoCert USA and NICS. And basically, we are seeing concrete cases of operators that are certified under NOP or under European regulations and try to enter the Mexican market without an LPO certificate and are rejected at the border. So basically, this is really being applied by Mexican authorities. At the beginning, some clients were telling us, well, we are not sure they are going to apply it, so we'll try not to have this certificate and still selling without it. Now it's definitely not possible. So I'm going to let my colleague Leopoldo explain you some examples of how is working a recertification process to bring you the solution that you have to comply with the law.
Okay, thank you. Well, we will have here 4 examples about recertification, the most important thing. And as Stefan says, we will have to be as concrete as possible. So in this case, you could see that you have a raw material produced on site 1 outside Mexico. So this will have this standard, 2 standards, USDA, NOP, and the Europe standard. But for you, if you want to make this product selling as organic in Mexico, you have to do this recertification process. And what you need to understand, if we see the next example, this is just one product and on site 2 outside Mexico. And the next one, please. we have in the next one slide two different products, and it's the same thing. You will have products number 1 and 2, and you will have to do this recertification LPO process, because if you want to import or you are a processor or a packager in Mexico, you must get this LPO recertification, and it all that you need for this certification, it's you have to, or we have to audit your, in this case, the last part of the chain, of the last part of the site, of the last part of the processing plants, to before you export this product, to have this this LPO certification. And on this way, you can be processed or repackaged this product and sold it in Mexico. Okay. The next one, it's about producing plants. You could have two different producing plants into different sites, and you can produce the same product, or in the next example, you can produce different products, but it's the same thing. You have to do this process, the certification process, to importer or processed or repackaging in Mexico to be compliant with this LPO certification. In the next slide, you are going to see that there are two different products, and it's the same thing. What you need, what we want you to explain you, it's that we only need to audit this at the last site of, in this case, the last processing plant, before you export this product to Mexico, to be compliant with this LPO certification.
Basically, what you need to remember in one short sentence is we can endorse all your certification of the whole chain, and on the last processing plant, on the last site, have an audit to check all the differences between LPO and your current certificate. So basically, that's why it's much more easier, because you only need to audit the last processing steps of your products before importation to Mexico.
Okay, now we're going to see what are the main differences that will affect your current certification. Especially the most important difference, it's the general documentation that it's required by Mexican authorities. This is going to be the organic plan according to the scope of LPO certification, documents covering traceability and mass balance of the product with EcoCert formals, and the marketing procedure. Now, about inputs, the inputs that you could use under this LPO certification are going to be only those that Mexican regulations allow, and with the labeling, it's the same thing, the one that the Mexican regulation specify, and an example is present afterwards. But as Stefan says, as you already count with an organic certificate, the main effort will be the required documentation to do this process very, very easy for you. About inputs, this is a general example that you could see. You have here two inputs. The first, it's allowed for NOP regulation, but it's not allowed for LPO and the Europe standard. So for the second one, you could use this input on all these standards. So that's the example of, there are going to be some inputs that you could use, and there will be someone that you cannot use for LPO certification. About these labeling requirements, all the information, and this is mandatory information, must be in Spanish. This information, it's going to have the operator's name, the information of EcoCert, the GMO-free product, and you have this recommended information that it's the logo of Mexico Organic and the EcoCert logo, and you have information accepted that is the logos of other standards that you have, that could be the Europe standard or the NOP standard. And the most important thing about this is this validity of LPO certificate through recertification, because we are endorsing a certificate of another standard. Therefore, we must use the date on which that certificate was issued to determine the LPO certificate duration. This means that we are adding 364 days because Mexico considers that a certificate duration it's 365 days. Okay, so what this means is that all the products produced under this validity of the endorsed certificate, which means from the issuance to plus 364 days, are considered recertified. Okay, and this is an example. If the certificate of the other standard, NOP or Europe standard, it's issued on January 1st, the validity will be until December 21st, according to law, to Mexican law. If you recertified on March 1st, the validity of LPO certificate will be until December 21st, and all the products produced between January 1st and December 31st are considered certified. And the important thing about when you are going to export your products to Mexico is this document, that it's a transaction certificate, and what you need to request to us, and what the steps for you can obtain this document, and the next ones. First, you have to do this request with a completion of transaction certificate application. We are going to review the complementary documentation, that it's the transport document, the invoices, etc. And then we are sending you a draft to you for validation, and then we can issue this final TC and signed on digital form. And there is important fact that TC, a control document or documento de control, are the same document.
Basically, here you can remember the email we showed you at the beginning, saying that at customs they always require the control document and the certificate to enter the Mexican market. So basically, this is what is the control document here in this slide. Okay, so to explain you a little bit more about the certification process that we have in EcoCert. First of all, we have some application documents that we try to simplify. We have simplified them actually a month ago. So basically, it's these are documents to know what is about your project, and know the times we will need to reflect in the quotation. Generally, this is directly dealt with the local subsidiary. It depends on the country, but in general, that's how it's managed because we are used to have local auditors that are going to visit you, and not necessarily auditors from Mexico traveling to China, for example. We have Chinese auditors that are accredited and validated to perform these audits. Then we have some documents that we need to validate, mainly the organic system plan that we have for LPO standard, which is, I would say, the main document, and with its annexes represent the main difficulty for you in general, because it's not necessarily documents that you are very used to manage with, and it also needs to be filled in Spanish. Also, you can include a double language version with the English and, for example, automatic translation to have the Spanish version. This is accepted, but due to the national regulations, we have to get it in Spanish. And what is important to know is that we need to validate this information at least 15 days before the audit to be sure that we are going to perform a good audit with an auditor which is already prepared and already knows your information. Then the auditor comes to your facilities to audit you and sends us the audit report to the office in Mexico. We review it, we send you the non-conformities you have to resolve in case you have, or we ask the auditor with complementary information if we need it. And finally, we can take the certification decision once we get all the answers on all the questions or non-conformities we have. What is important to know is that generally, all the first parts of the process, you can see them directly with the local subsidiary, including in the end, the steps 4 and 5. In general, you see that directly with the local subsidiary, and the local subsidiary goes with us to see all the certification decision part, but you do not have direct contact with us in general, because it's much easier for you to work with your local contacts, especially when we are talking about different times. So this is how it's dealt, but there is no absolute rule, and it really depends country by country how we can attend and give this service. I think that's it on that part. As a conclusion, before letting you ask your questions, if you have some, is that as EcoCert, we are the best certifier for your company to be able to help you, as we are a reference for the certification of organic products, being the global leader of this kind of certification, and a brand recognized by customers that most of the time not only look for organic products, but also for organic products certified by EcoCert, and look for our seal that you can see on the top right corner. We already certify LPO in 18 countries to date, very different countries with very different contexts, very different cultural aspects, but we can deal with that through our 28 subsidiaries all over the world. And we are able to give this service. It is in the United States, in India, in China, in France, in Brazil, in Peru, and many other countries all over the planet. So basically, that's quite kind of a good advantage for you. And our experts are consulted by international authorities about these changes. For example, last week in the United States, during the meeting of organic certifiers in the US, we presented a session about Mexican organic certification and requirements. So that's the symbol of this recognition. We also have from some big companies that trust us on this kind of project, and this has been the case of Costco, which required our support when this was implemented 2 years ago. Okay, so I would like to thank you for attending this meeting, and I let you our contacts in case you have some very specific questions that you would need us to answer more specifically. You have our emails and phone numbers. You can also contact us through WhatsApp at these numbers if you need it. So thank you very much to everybody, and I'm going to see in the chat if we have some questions.